Hey, Folk Studio here. So today's daily is going to be looking at Jungle Alistar, a very cool jungler, very aggressive. I can actually play him because he's a support who can jungle, and I know his combo. Aside from that, I want to give a big shout out to Para, Docskull, for answering questions in Monday's Reddit thread, and actually to give a bit of a message about Mono. So Mono Esports is a relatively new team, and the name Mono is actually really appropriate because the guy behind it is a guy. It is not Curse, it is not Dignitas, it is not Fnatic, these big organizations that have been running for a while. This is a new team. This is the root of Fnatic and Dig. This is the guy that starts it all. And I just think it's awesome he's putting in his time, his money, his effort into a team, and this is something that not only the LoL community needs, but just gaming in general. The more people coming in and trying these things, the better. And I'm just going to link their things, give them a heads up, give them a shout out, because he is doing cool stuff. And aside from that, don't have much to say. Let's jump into the replay. IPL 4 is going to be this week, but right now we got Jungle Alistar. So first things first, let's see who's playing who. We got Chris Vicious on Alistar, Akes on Tristana, Red Lol on Kennen, Bizarre Contact on Riven, HC Koira on Soraka, VG Cold Reaver on Rise, Nagaku representing on Udyr, Homosexual on Maokai, Lauren CZ on Urgot, and Brelon on Taric. Now, Alistar is a very interesting character because he has 4 skills. Of those 4 skills, one of them you can kind of use whenever, and that's Triumphant Roar. But between Headbutt, Pulverize, and Unbreakable Will, those 3 skills are not easy to use. Obviously you can go, okay, I want to hit a bunch of people with my stun. But when do you want to headbutt someone? When do you want to headbutt stun combo? When do you want to do all the various options Alistar has? You can flash stun, you can headbutt stun, you can walk up stun. Sometimes you need to do one thing, sometimes you need to do another. And that may seem obvious, oh, well, that's just how you play the character. But the decisions aren't easy to make. Now, the thing about Jungle Alistar too, he's super gank oriented. So the first thing you're going to do is gank a lane. In this case, Taric is missing a ward. And clearly you can see from Urgot and Taric's reactions that they knew he was coming. That Taric's stun, by the way, very important. It did not let Chris get the combo, and he wasn't able to follow up. He could have flash stunned, but that would have wasted his flash. A kill was not guaranteed. Tristana Soraka don't do a lot of damage. Tristana does, Soraka not so much. So it was better for him just to try and go for that CC. Now it's important with gank-oriented junglers to keep up your jungling. You can't just rely on ganks. I mean, you can, and if you get those ganks, awesome. But if it fails, you're going to fall way behind. So you need to try and balance it out. Now watch how he jungles. He keeps up the trample buff. Trample was introduced a while ago, where every time Alistar uses a spell, he gets a passive AoE damage ghost walking thing. And it lasts for 3 seconds, and it's up to Chris to keep it up all the time while jungling. Note too that you can headbutt minions, and something unfortunate about headbutting minions is you can headbutt them into leash range. So this can be very important. Sometimes you'll see an Alistar headbutt Lizard over a wall. So that's why Alistar jungling isn't all that easy and new player friendly is what I'm going to go for. Because you can make a lot of little mistakes. You can let your trample run over itself. You can go ahead and accidentally headbutt a creep too far away. And it can really cost you. Now, Riven has Udyr very pushed up. And this is just a thing of communications. Where Alistar doesn't know whether he should blow his flash or not. And Riven's a bit... yeah, well, Riven's not helping. And this is interesting. Chris is trying to headbutt that Maokai into a wall. Doing so will actually stun for quite a while. But he actually jukes himself by walking out of the bush. And that's just kind of one of those things where that's a really good idea. Like I said, if you headbutt somebody into a wall, they're going to be CC'd for about a second. And it's not a normal CC, you really can't react to it. But because he couldn't get the right positioning, it wasn't the best option. And now Udyr's a little farther out, so this gank might work. He actually pokes out for just a brief second, but the way the angles work, Udyr didn't have vision. So Riven sets up this gank with her CC. Udyr does not have boots. Chris knows this. He's able to go ahead, go forward into the tower, and just send Udyr back without any risk to himself. He takes some damage, but he was never in any danger of dying to that tower. There was no way Udyr was gonna chase him out or get away. There was no way Udyr was gonna get so far that Alistar could not catch him without dying to the tower. So that's pretty good for him. Now, something Alistar does that I have to question is, he makes a lot of assumptions, and you want to make assumptions based off the information given. But here, Ryze was mid, he backed up, and Alistar immediately says he warded. But that doesn't necessarily mean a ward's there. If you looked at Ryze's inventory, he didn't have a ward at the start. MLIK could have warded, but it doesn't mean he did. And you want to be able to go, well, I know there's a ward there. Now that would have been a situation to ask yourself, is there? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. Now, this is a very interesting gank. He gets that perfect combination, he gets that perfect CC, and Urgot runs back into lane. That was actually an incredibly smart play. You didn't want Taric dying too. Urgot was not going to get away without flash from the Alistar Tristana Soraka. And he knew that if he chased to the tower, they might just follow up and catch Taric afterwards, with the reset on Tristana's W from the kill. So he dies, he suicides, he gets some damage off, and, well, it happens. Now, Alistar buys in oracles, and I really like these oracle plays, but they're risky. So it's up to Chris to make sure he stays safe in all of his ganks. And that case right there was just Riven going in on her own too early. She didn't have her shield up, she didn't have a way to survive Udyr's damage. She actually died to the Tiger dot tick. So that was actually one shot from Udyr that killed her in the end. But what Alistar wants to do now is he wants to stay very, very mobile, but he wants to make sure he stays safe. So when he doesn't have his ult up, when he doesn't have flash up, he can't take risks to try and take out wards. Counter warding can be huge, it just sets up so many ganks, and with a character like Alistar, who is just so gank heavy and good at them, it's huge. But losing that oracles can set you back so far, and Alistar has a big problem. There's one thing I don't like about support Alistar. You reach a point in the game where you just start dying. And Jungle Alistar doesn't have this problem quite as much because he gets reliable gold, but it can still happen, and you gotta be very, very careful not to reach that point, especially as a jungler. Now, MLIK and Alistar are actually beating on each other here, and it's very interesting, because while this may seem obvious, like, oh, they're just kind of harassing before they go, MLIK's making sure Alistar can't conveniently get to top. He's making sure that he's going to be intercepted on the way there. And as you could see, Ryze and Udyr were fighting Riven and Kennen up top. One jungler showing up for either team could have turned that fight. But Alistar, being closer, was going to show up first. So Mal was making sure that didn't happen, and that at best it was going to end with a 2-on-2, which they were actually winning at the time. So right now, Alistar goes for that gank, he clears the wards. Udyr is kind of in a bad position now. He did get that kill on Riven, but he's never going to be able to keep those wards down. And this is a very, very interesting dragon from blue side, or purple side. They saw that Ryze had gotten blue buff, which meant that MLIK had helped him with it, and he was on the top side of the jungle. So they go for dragon. Unfortunately, they don't have Alistar nearby. They don't have a smite or someone to tank dragon. So they do get dragon, but Kennen gets caught, Tristana's low, and Tristana goes back to fight. She already used her ult to try and get away, and she's just now in a really bad position. I think she might have ulted dragon actually. But what's important is that her ult is down. And what could have been a good dragon ends up being kind of a risk. And the question is, should they have gone for dragon? Well, it worked out, so yes. But they should have just let Kennen die. Soraka survived, which is important because she has oracles. And I love how... I just love that. That was just fantastic. I mean, Rise could have stolen it, but nobody expects the Alistar headbutt pulverize combo. If anything, you expect a smite, and if there is a smite, well, you're not going to stop it, so there's not much you can really do. But the headbutt pulverize combo, that one's a surprise. Now, Alistar's just doing the same thing quite a bit. He's roaming around and checking all the bushes. And while that may not be the most exciting thing, it's fulfilling his use of the oracles. He has his 400 gold, he's invested it, he's killed more of their wards than he spent on the oracles. And that's when you kind of go into how cost efficient oracles is. If you kill 5 wards, you spent 275 on the oracles because you got 125 gold from the wards, and they've spent 375 on wards that you've killed. Now, it doesn't really equate that well, but killing wards off also has this huge advantage. I don't know if you saw that, there was actually a ward in that bush that Alistar walked by. But Udyr has to ward so defensively because of the oracles that when he actually pushed out far, that ward didn't do anything for him. He knew Alistar was there, but Alistar was already in a position to kill him. This ward in that bush just did not do anything. And that's actually something very, very important about wards. A lot of players will go, oh, I've got a ward here, so this means I'm going to be safe. But wards only provide as much vision as the area they're placed in. So if you have a ward that is right next to your lane, and you're pushed up far and it's going to take you 5 seconds to get back, and they can reach you in 2, that ward's not going to do anything. That's why you see a lot of players will try and ward as far as they can. Now, interestingly enough, they see Alistar here. I believe there was a ward in the brush right there. And that's just kind of an unfortunate side effect of a well-warded jungle. You can get caught in places you don't expect, and the oracles will give you an extra false sense of security. In that case, he hadn't checked the bush, so that bush was still at risk, and they blew his ult for it. Now, taking that red was also incredibly risky, but he did have oracles. He did know they could not see him in that bush. There might have been another ward somewhere else, but that was unlikely. So they see Rise taking blue. They see that the enemy is clearing out wards. They're trying to get back that map control, and now they're in kind of a scary position. As you can see, Soraka and Alistar are kind of on their own. He's trying to secure blue buff, but the team is not in a position to really fight, and with Alistar ult down, he can get caught and he can die. They secure that blue buff and they just need to retreat, but Chris does something a bit silly. He goes for that ward. He's able to flash at just the right time to make sure MLIK does not catch him. And this is the risk. This is why you don't want to be caught without your ult down, or ult up as Alistar. You're actually really squishy. And he's barely able to make it out. Now you'll notice he stunned Udyr, and he didn't use his headbutt. He stunned Udyr because he knew that he had to stun something. There wasn't much he could actually do. And he didn't headbutt because, well, that would just put him further back. He would knock one person back, but beat the entire team. And that fight right there, it's kind of hard to explain. They both don't have a lot of damage. Like, there is decent damage on both teams. Riven does a lot of damage, Ken does a lot of damage, but Rise can keep Riven back. Kennen needs to get his Zonias. So, they have great damage in some situations, but both teams can prevent it very well. Now, that stun was fantastic. He got MLIK just as he got up. And this is the problem blue team has. They don't have massive teamfight potential. This fight actually started out kind of well, but they just grouped up so much. The Kennen ult is just able to do enough damage to burst down Rise and just put blue side in just a bad position. Now, blue side has a team based off picks. Taric, Rise, Urgot. Urgot is kind of good at picks. But Taric, Rise, Urgot, MLIK. These are characters who will pick you off. The only character who isn't great at just grabbing one person and murdering them is going to be Udyr. But you look at the Alistar, the Kennen, the Riven, that's all really, really high AoE damage. So, if they get into a big team fight, and they're clumped enough for Alistar and Riven to do their thing, which is going to be kind of tight, then they're going to lose a fight no matter what. And if Kennen can hit enough of them with Zult, which is going to be a much wider area, that will probably still win a fight for purple side, if Kennen doesn't immediately get bursted down. So they really want to play a game based off picks, based off catching someone, and just bursting them down. And unfortunately, Soraka's really good at anti-burst. And there is a lot of physical damage on blue side. But they do have Rise. They will be able to deal with a Soraka. Now this exchange is very, very scary for both teams. They really want to kill each other, but they just do not have the 5 members there. They don't have Ken and they don't have Rise, and as you can see, they really both needed them. Ken was needed there to keep people in place with his stun, and Rise was needed for the damage in the cage. Also, that stun, in case you're wondering, he got rune prisoned as he was doing his combo, and it just stopped him dead in his tracks. But he's okay. He's gonna do this. You can headbutt over terrain. And Tarek's stun, as Kennen ults, keeps Kennen just out of range. Now, it's very hard to say this, but CC can matter quite a bit at different times. In that case, if Tarek had stunned Kennen a couple seconds beforehand, well, he might have not ulted and gotten the team, but it would have kept him off. But because Tarek got that stun as Kennen ulted, Kennen was able to do nothing to interact in that team fight. His ult hit nobody, it wasn't going to hit anybody, and that was just so good for blue side. They need to take advantage of this. They need to start getting into fights, because without Kennen ult, they're in such a bad position. They just got to make sure they don't clump up so Rise and Riven just massacre their team. Riven, by the way, does a ton of AoE damage. It's actually incredible how much AoE she does. It's just in a very, very small contained area. So she does the damage, she just doesn't do the AoE, I guess. She's got the effect, but not the area. And because of this, I've seen a lot of games go very, very oddly, because people forget about that AoE damage from Riven. And once again, blue side is trying to do something. They're trying to get a pick. But unfortunately, they waited a bit too long. Kennen ult is up. So they're doing it. They're doing that thing that they can't do. They're clumped up. There are 4 people next to each other. The perfect Alistar CC. The only reason MLIK didn't get CC was that he snared. And that snare wasn't actually that good. It just kept Alistar next to the team. And this fight, I can't even begin to explain it. Kennen is exhausted. He's not doing a whole lot of damage, but he is keeping people in place. Riven's ult does not hit anybody low on HP, so it doesn't do a whole lot of damage. There's now this weird kite going on from purple side where they're trying to get away, but they don't really need to. The focus is on Alistar, and they're trying to kill Tristana at the same time. Urgot actually swaps Tristana back, which is really good. They're trying to keep her in place, but they really can't. They just don't have that team fight. And Udra falls, Tarek falls, the fight's just going to end in favor of purple side. And that was just the case of the team fight. The Kennen ult was enough, even with Kennen exhausted. Also, Rise going down, I think, is most important right now to blue side. Urgot does a lot of damage, but Rise is Rise, and Rise scares the crap out of me. But anyhow, that was what purple side wanted. They wanted that amazing Alistar stun, that follow-up Kennen ult. And now Kennen has Zhonya's. Now Kennen won't die. He won't be exhausted and unable to escape. He's going to be there, and he's going to be dealing a lot of damage. Unfortunately, the mobility that purple side has isn't the mobility blue side has. They got a lot less. Now, purple side also messed up. They didn't retreat, and they let the enemy know they were out on the map still. So they immediately went for Baron, which was a good idea. But the Tarek stun was a half second too late. If that had been there a fraction of a second, you'll notice that Alistar actually headbutted after he'd been stunned. Like, the stun was there. And purple side does something smart. They don't engage. Do not engage in a situation like that. If Alistar was not going to make it, Kennen might have been able to do some damage. His ult was up. But if you can hold with 4 people, just hold with 4 people. If you can't hold, yeah, fight. But in that case, Alistar wasn't going to make it out. There was no chance of that happening. And now purple side has this awesome buff, and everybody's scaling super well with it. Kennen's at 300 AP, or 280. Tristan does 250. Riven does 230. Now, Riven is someone who does a lot of scaling with attack damage, so that's kinda big. She just needs to make sure she doesn't die, which is her big problem. Now, I love this exchange. I love this exchange for this headbutt. Now, where do you headbutt someone normally? You just back towards your team. Vicious headbutts Udyr into this little pocket. The entire goal is to make sure Udyr can't escape. If he headbutted him in either direction, well, he'd be closer to those bushes, to the escape, to his team. That time he's just like, you know what, go to the lizard. Be trapped in here. And I don't see a lot of people do that. I see a lot of people get their mind focused in a position where, okay, I'm going to headbutt, but I'm just going to headbutt back in the direction we were coming from, because back is bad and forward is good for you. Now, blue side needs to hold. They're in such a bad position, though. Just those few team fights, the team fight potential from Kennen really coming into play. Tristana is split pushing, and that's their one saving grace, but they don't have Udyr. And without Udyr, and even with Udyr, they can't really engage into a team fight. Rise goes for that pick, he goes for Kennen, but unfortunately that just sets him up to be chain CC'd. Riven's getting her AoE off on 3 people, and it's the end of blue team, sadly. Even if they do well in this fight, even if they come out even, Tristan is still pushing top and Udyr cannot stop her at this point in the game. Rest in peace, homosexual. Rest in peace. But that was Alistar. This was an interesting little game. And Jungle Alistar is someone I highly recommend. He's very fun to play, he's very cool. But it's going to take some time and effort to accidentally not kill, or to not accidentally kill your entire team with a bad skill usage. This is the studio saying adios, and I'll see y'all Friday.